We're gonna attempt to record this video one more time because I actually tried to record this video before and it didn't work. So we're gonna do it again. What's up, you guys? Okay, we're gonna do a cool little demo mapping out our calendar year. One of the biggest, most common questions I get asked, and I said this in the first time I recorded this, and I'll say it again. You're either going to love me or you're gonna totally hate me by the end of this video because I am very neurotic when it comes to mapping out my schedule. My calendar is sacred. My time is holy. I am not about to burn myself out, exhaust myself, pull myself in too many different directions, or not be ineffective in my business. And the answer to solving and preventing all of those problems is actually getting organized and getting clear about what my year looks like. So for context and what you need to know about my business and the way that I operate things is that, number one, I believe that I am designing the life that I want and I'm building my business around that. Something you're going to see when I structure my calendar. There are certain ways I do this to actually hold the biggest amount of space and respect for my personal life. Okay, so like I take off in April, that's my wedding anniversary, to explore the possibility of going on vacation. In November and December, I want to go to Peru for my dieta study with ayahuasca, so I block that out. I make sure that I come first, and this is really important to note for all of you guys. When you're mapping out your year and you're planning things, put down what matters to you. That being said, this is a business. This is not a hobby, okay? So having a calendar and holding yourself accountable is really important. You cannot change and improve and grow if you're not actually tracking and measuring things, and doing the same thing over and over again is important to tracking, to developing good habits, to having good practices. That's why for me, year over year, we are kind of following the same exact schedule over and over and over again. What's also important to note about this is that my business and what you see today as my brand has been something I've been building since 2019. Yes, I've been an entrepreneur since 2015, but there was a whole era of my business prior to that that no longer exists. The offerings and courses and programs that I had between 2015 and 2019, they're not here anymore. In 2019, I went through a full year of launching and putting everything out there. And that is really important to note, because what you're going to learn in this experience, or what you're going to watch me do, is a reflection of my business based on where I am today. I have all my offers. I have my structures. I know my group coaching programs. I know what I sell, so I can map it out in a really beautiful way. If you're in a place in your business where your offers have not been created yet, you will probably have a different layout of what this looks like, but just keep that in mind, that what you're building is to eventually do something like this. And if you can't do something like this, like map out your year the way that I'm doing it, where you're putting down the programs that you're promoting and launching as the first step, because you don't know the programs, then maybe instead you're marking down where you're building things in your calendar, right? Instead of saying, okay, in quarter 3, I'm going to launch this program. Okay, in quarter 3, I'm going to build this program, right? I'm going to get it ready so then in quarter 4, I could put it out there into the world. Your structure, your process may look totally different than mine, but I'm going to show you mine. I'm going to be authentic and real and honest, and hopefully this gives you an inside scoop into how I do this. So the first thing I do is I get creative and I build my calendar in a layered process, okay? So the first thing I'm doing is getting some cool pieces of paper, some colored permanent markers, because you guys know this is my crafting vibe. It comes out when I'm mapping out my year. And I break my piece of paper into 4, okay? So 4 quadrants. 1 line right down the middle, 1 line across the page, and I label those boxes quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. So it's like 2 lists, half the year, half the year. Yeah, makes sense? Okay, so I'm gonna do that. Q1, Q2, you guys can do this process with me if we're mapping this out. I'll try to go as quickly as possible so that you don't feel like I'm maybe annoying you or lagging behind, but also pause this video if there's places where you need to like get a little bit more specific and clear. So I have my 4 quadrants, yeah? It looks like this, very clearly defined. the next thing I do is I add the months, right? So I'm just gonna put JFM, right? Like a list, January, February, March, in the quadrants so that I have something to work off of. And I'm using the same colored pen because this pen represents the outline and the structure of what I'm building. January, February, March, April, May, June. You guys all know these are our months. July, August, September, October, November, December. I just go simple where I literally just write the initials of each month just so it's in one place. All right, we have our outline. Throw your marker away. You're gonna get a new marker. Now, the first step I'm building in my structure is where are my programs? And what I'm gonna tell you right now is there's a difference, and you should be able to identify this as you build your brand, a difference between your like high generating revenue offers and then like your low cost generating offers. All of this to say is you could have a $33 program that's making you millions. Like that's possible for sure. For me, the way that I build my business is my 2 digital group coaching programs, Wild, Wealthy, Feminine, and Heal, and the Conscious Creator Mastermind. Those are the 3 things that generate the biggest revenue for me, right? So what I'm going to do is put those on the calendar first as the first layer of like, this is where these go and this is what I know. And that's important, okay? So I'm gonna use a colored marker to represent when the program starts, and I'm gonna put it in the months that are appropriate. But before I do that, I'm gonna take into consideration my lifestyle, okay? So I know in April I wanna have off. I know November, December I wanna have off. So I'm gonna work around that. I'm gonna build my business the way that it feels good to me. And I'm gonna put the runs of my programs down on the calendar so I see them and they're crystal clear and I know what I'm moving towards. Okay, so like I said, my outline is going to look different than yours, but for me, I like to give a lot of breath and have like on seasons, off seasons, on seasons, off seasons. So what I do is I pretty much go every other month. There are some exceptions, but you can see in January, I launch Conscious Creator, and then in March, I have the launch of Heal. I have a pause. I have Wild, Wealthy, Feminine. I have a pause because that was a mistake, so that was actually not there. And then I have CCM, and then I have a pause, and then I have Heal. And so I'm staggering things, right? Like every other month. And then this is the only time where there's like a little bit of an exception because November and December I want off. So I literally actually have these back to back, which is important. So I put those on my calendar. I know where they are happening, and what is happening is going with this pink marker. So I want you to keep this to the side because we're gonna bring it back in a minute. But this is when things are actually running, okay? Like this is your running color. And if you need to use a key, make a key, but you're gonna save that for a minute. And we're gonna grab a new marker and we're gonna talk about the next step. Once you have this on your schedule, the next thing to pay attention to is your production seasons and your launch seasons for these actual offers. This is like the most important thing to know as an entrepreneur and to continue to fine tune and improve. Your production process is the period of time before the actual run of a program where you are preparing everything. For example, Heal program in 2023, my production month I was making edits. And so I was doing a lot of reconstruction of the program. I was adding new graphics, designing new workbooks, recording new meditations. That was the production of the program, which was a previous month before the program ever started, okay? This is important. Your production era of your business, I like to give myself a month's period of time. And this is going to be different season by season because you're going to become more efficient and your business is going to change, your program is going to change. But in that production month, you're preparing everything for the launch. You're doing the graphics, you're doing the emails, you're getting really clear about maybe your discovery call process if you have one. But the production is kind of that part where you're really preparing for the launch itself and you're preparing for the actual run of the program. And production season is supposed to get more efficient and more efficient and more efficient over time. But I need to know how long it is. And for me personally, that's a month. Everybody's business is different, but I'm going to be aware that my production era is going to be something I'm going to write down in a different colored marker. So I'm going to use this color for my production processes. This will be the color that I'm using to work behind the scenes. So I'm going to keep that in mind. But the other piece I need to keep in mind is when enrollment is open. Here's my little black marker. This is going to represent enrollment. Enrollment periods, again, are different for everybody, also known as launch time. This is when you're opening doors to bring people in and you're selling something. So in March, I have Heal on my calendar. And so that means that in February, I'm going to be in my enrollment month. And in the month before January, I'm going to be in my production month. That's how I personally do it. So I'm going to map that out here with my structure. But this is also just to reiterate and remind you that your launch process may be different. You might have 2 months of enrollment, might have 2 months of production, but you need to know what that is so that you can plan. So think about it. Next year, how much time do you really need? I'm going to do a month of production and a month of enrollment. So production followed by enrollment. January production, February enrollment, the program starts in March. So let's map that out. Okay, so now you can see my board is a little bit more advanced. And you'll notice by this breakdown, just what I talked about before, there's a period of production, there's a period of enrollment, and then there's the time when the program actually runs. And this repeats itself over and over again, where I have the enrollment for Wild Wealthy Feminine, the production of Wild Wealthy Feminine, right? And the actual run of Wild Wealthy Feminine. So it's month, month, month. Production, enrollment, run of program. Same thing over and over again. If you look at CCM production, CCM enrollment, CCM runs. Okay, so I'm mapping this out just so I have really clear defined examples, okay, of like where I'm busy. And I'm using different colors so I can be aware of, in the black marker, maybe this is different for you, but I'm using different colored markers to track where I'm in front end marketing versus when I'm in behind the scenes production, because all these different things play a different role, right? When I look at this schedule, I can see with just one color eye, okay, here I'm promoting and selling enrollment periods, yeah? And with a different color, I can see, oh, this is when I'm in production behind the scenes. And it's important to be able to distinguish between those frequencies when you're mapping out your calendar year, because as we continue and move forward, you're gonna notice there's other stuff we put here on the list that you don't wanna cross-reference. Like, you don't wanna be in production for a program and also be in a big back-end project in your business. And you don't wanna be enrolling for a group coaching program while also being in enrollment for something else. So let's talk about, now that we have this here, another thing I want to add just for context is that in November and December in my business, the front end thing that we're really focused on enrolling people in is the Black Friday sale, the holiday sale. So I'm just going to make note of holiday on November, Black Friday, okay, gonna put that in November, and then also December, I do a holiday sale too. So I'm just gonna put that there so that I know. And that's also just another example. Like, I don't want to be enrolling group coaching programs in November and December. It's the holidays. Like, I'm going to do a Black Friday flash sale and have some space to rest. So that's, keep that in mind. This is why we use the color-coded markers here so we can really see. Okay, so at this point, you have your heavy hitters on your outline. Now, if you don't have your heavy hitters yet, maybe for you, it's not enrollment seasons. Maybe it's just production projects, but get organized and recognize how much time you need to produce something, how much time you need to actually enroll people in, and then the actual runs of the program. Obviously, the runs of my program bleed quarter by quarter by quarter. I'm just writing the start experience on this board. Obviously, Heal is a 12-week program. Wild Wealthy Feminine is a 6-week program. Nothing ever conflicts or cross-references. Conscious Creator is 6 months, so I'm literally doing 6 months and then 6 months. And that's really nice to do 2 enrollment periods in the year for the Mastermind. But also just to say, like, I've built this layer by layer, okay? So you might be asking at this point, well, Lauren, what about retreats? And what about digital courses? And what about all these other things? One-on-one coaching. For me and my business, I'm building my calendar with the foundation of what has the most potential to scale. My retreats don't have the most potential to scale, so they are not priority on my calendar. They're certainly not priority in this process. They only have availability for a certain amount of times a year and a certain amount of people. So I'm not going to put that first on my calendar. In terms of digital courses are not our heavy hitters. We do multiple six figures in course sales, but majority of our revenue is coming from bigger enrollments like this. So that's why we put down the group coaching programs first and the mastermind first. Everything else goes secondary. So what I'm going to do next on this list is I'm going to look at this outline and I'm going to say, okay, based on this, now if I'm running retreats, where do I want to put that? Because retreats are not the priority, but I also don't want to be running a retreat when I'm in an enrollment period for a group coaching program. That's so crazy. So I'm going to actually place these things and make sure that they're in places where there's no black marker, there's no reference to enrollment. So for example, March is when the Heal program starts for me and I'm in production for Wild Wealthy Feminine. I can certainly do an enrollment period for my retreat. So I'm going to put my retreat to run in March because I like to promote and fill my retreat while I'm actually running the retreat. So I'm going to put this in black marker because even though it's a run, it's the sale that I really care about. So I'm going to put retreat for March. Retreat, enroll, and run. And then I also noticed that in July, I have kind of a similar situation where I'm in production for Heal. Conscious Creator Mastermind is running. I'm going to say, okay, that's where my next retreat is going to be. Retreat, run, and enroll. Okay, cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep that marker and I'm going to look at the months where I'm not selling anything. And I'm going to put a line for the potential to actually sell something. You don't have to be selling every single month. This is not required of you. But if you're somebody who wants to keep a strong revenue generating thing, you may want to just put a line on the months where there's nothing to sell so that you have possibility to explore maybe releasing a new digital course, doing a live masterclass, something like that. Maybe you have a digital course you want to put on sale. So I'm going to look and I'm going to say, okay, I see based on this marker that I'm following, I have enrollment in Q2 for Wild Wealthy Feminine and for Conscious Creator, but there's nothing happening in May. So I'm just going to put a line there. That is potential. I also see space in October, so I'm going to put a line there. And I also see space in January, so I'm going to put a line there. Cool. So I have 3 spaces. That's pretty cool. I have 3 spaces for potential to play. Maybe I want to release my digital courses there. Maybe I don't want to do anything at all and just rest. But in terms of selling, I am happy to see that I'm pretty full. Every month I have the potential to sell something. Nothing is conflicting. I'm not doing everything all at once. This is really nice. This feels really, really good. Now, please keep in mind, you need to know how long your production processes are. Maybe a month, maybe 2 weeks, whatever. You also need to know how long your enrollment periods are. If you don't know that, taking this process another step further is going to be really challenging because you won't be able to put dates on your calendar. Dates on your calendar are very important for creating structure. But for now, just keep this in mind that at this point in the study, you should have something like this, which is super cool. We're going to put it to the side and we're going to take another step in this process. With any pen you'd like, it doesn't really matter, but we're going to make 3 lists. The first list we are going to make is the list of cleanup projects, okay? Now, cleanup projects are really important in business because when you're an entrepreneur, you are working in your business and you're also working on your business. This board that we just mapped out, this is working in my business, okay? Something I want to say too that's just coming up on this is that this is really important in treating your business like a business and not a hobby because during these enrollment periods, for me, for example, I don't want to be on vacation. I don't want to be doing discovery calls and trying to sell in the middle of a vacation process. So when my husband comes to me in March and says, hey, let's plan a trip, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to go, yeah, well, maybe we could do it in May because I'm not on sales calls all day, every day. So like, I won't have to worry about selling. So like, I'll pick, yes, I map things out in advance based on my lifestyle, but when things come up in my lifestyle throughout the year, I'm referring to this and this has priority. Like I'm following everything to a T as best I can. That's working in your business, okay? Working on your business is about identifying the bigger projects that you want to get done and carefully placing them around working in your business. You cannot work on a business that isn't actually making money. I mean, you can, but like that's a waste of time. You want to be working in a business efficiently and having space to work on it at the same time without pulling your energy into a direction where you're working on a business that has no time to generate revenue. This happens for a lot of people where they spend like 8 months building their website or 7 years designing a group coaching program and they never work in the business. So they're not building their audience, building their leads, building their actual enrollment process. And as a result, they have an offer they spent so much time on, but never actually did anything with it. So it's just important to note that when we're doing this list of like the cleanup projects, the reason we're building this first is because this is actually what makes your business a business and has you generating revenue. And then we're placing our cleanup projects where they need to go. Cleanup projects, for example, number one, rebuilding a website, okay? Another great example is if you're deciding that you're gonna launch a podcast next year, or you wanna release a YouTube show and have a specific amount of episodes already produced, or maybe a cleanup project for you is that your one-on-one onboarding process is a mess, or you feel like maybe your podcast production process is really sloppy and wastes a lot of time. These are projects that will fix your business and create efficiency, will also advance you and make you feel more elevated as a brand. Sometimes the cleanup project is, I need to update all the new photos on my website. But these cleanup projects need to be carefully planned. You can't try to do them all at once. So in this step of the study, make your cleanup project list and write down all the things that you want to do that are working on your business. It's the enhancement, the development, the next level, blah, 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 blah. The projects that may require some time and some effort. I know for us, we want to rebuild and fix our terms and conditions. We want to fix our podcast production process. And for me also, I want to advance the homepage of our website. And I also want to rebuild and redesign the shop page, which we actually did this year, but I'm just going to put it down for the purposes of this demo. Once I have my cleanup project list, the next list I'm going to write down are the creative visions that I have. So maybe in 2024, I want to write a book. Maybe in 2025, actually, because we're talking about next year. Maybe I want to start my YouTube. Maybe that's really important. Maybe I want to create an email subscribers list, something like that. These are the things that like will enhance my business, but they're more like creative tasks that aren't necessarily generating revenue, but they could lead to generating revenue. So I'm going to make that as my second list. And then I have a third list. And the third list I have are the KPI goals. KPI goals are going to play a role when we talk about our day-to-day strategy, but this is just important for you to quantify the momentum of your business. And I like to look, when I'm doing this exercise, like to look at the key performance indicators that are not necessarily tailored or tied to revenue. So for example, number of Instagram followers, email list subscribers, podcast listeners. Maybe you have some KPIs that in 2025 you want to advance that are not financial. Those numbers you're going to write down. So for me, it's YouTube. I want to grow to 5,000 followers. The email list, I want to get it to 30,000 people. And then also the Instagram, I would like to get to 300,000. Ooh, I almost like choked as I said that. Whew. So write your lists. You have your cleanup projects, you have your creative projects, you have your KPI goals. Once you're done with that, you're going to bring those lists back to this board to start to layer in the responsibilities that you have. Now, you notice I used a color for production. I'm going to use the same color because that color signifies back end work. Okay, so I'm going to look at my cleanup projects. I'm going to take that same marker that I had for my production that I was writing down, my production windows for my launches, and I'm going to put those cleanup projects on the board during the months that have no production. So the last thing that I want to have happen is that I'm in production for a program and I'm also in a big back-end cleanup project. That's not helpful. I want to make sure I'm balancing. So I have my cleanup projects. Number one, advancing my terms and conditions. Okay, quarter one in February, I literally have no production in this month. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. Terms and conditions production. TNC. Amazing. I also see that in January, February, March, April, I have no back-end production. So what else can I take? Podcast. Okay, so I'm going to do podcast production. Podcast production. Amazing. So good. So I'm going to put my cleanup projects on this list. But what's important to note about this, and this is just a little tip, when you're doing this in your business, these lists, your cleanup projects, your creative projects, your KPIs, like everything we're doing here, even this, you should be moving it to a digital format. This is just to take a breath and to see the creative outline of things and to not get so overwhelmed with a digital perspective when we start. But you should be moving your KPI goals list to some type of Excel spreadsheet that you track every month or even every week, sometimes every day if you're crazy. You should have a document in your phone for cleanup projects and creative visions that you want to pursue, because when you're moving through your year, you're going to be adding to those lists. You're going to be uncovering and realizing, oh my God, I want to do this, I want to do that. And a good entrepreneur is going to sit down and look at this schedule and say, where does it fit? Not how important do I want to do this and why do I want to do it now and how can I possibly fit all of this in? This is not healthy for your nervous system. Be responsible, look at your schedule and say, okay, that's a quarter 2 project, that's a quarter 3 project. I can't do that right now. I can't even get that done this year. That's fine, okay? Now, if you want to move your productions, maybe let's say something on your cleanup project list you put down on February, and then you get to February and you're like, oh shit, that's not nearly as important as this other cleanup project I've realized needs to be done. Cool, beautiful, that's fine, okay? So other cleanup projects, just for ideas, maybe you want to revamp your Instagram so that the highlights are really nice and the pinned posts are really clear. That's a beautiful cleanup project that advances your business. Maybe you want to create a one-on-one client onboarding process like I talked about. Maybe for you, you need to actually clean up your email subscribers or move things from Kajabi to another place or from another place to Kajabi. Whatever it is, these are cleanups. They make your business more advanced. Anything that's making your business more advanced, that's improving the structure of your operation, cleanup project. Creative projects like writing your book or starting a YouTube or developing your email marketing. This is where it's getting a little bit complicated because we're going to start to transition into conversations around daily tasks and weekly tasks and monthly tasks as you move the needle forward. I think personally, when you have these goals that are about reach, okay, so you say, okay, I have a goal next year, 5,000 YouTube subscribers, creating content regularly. You do need to develop some sort of strategy for how you're going to bring people into those things, right? Same thing with the email list. If you want next year to build your email list to a certain number, to reach those goals, it's really cool to have tailored push strategies where maybe there's a month in quarter 3 where you're heavily promoting your podcast with a big push marketing strategy. And then throughout the rest of the year, you have daily tasks or weekly tasks that are slowly moving the needle forward. An example of this is for us in our email subscriber goals, we have a series in quarter 4 called What I Wish I Knew. And it's a summit. We bring other speakers on to share their medicine, and everybody has to promote that they're a part of this series. And to get access to this podcast that everybody's a part of, you have to give your email. Okay, so with that, we're getting a lot of new emails. This is not something we do every month, but we do hold space for it in quarter 4 as a front-end marketing strategy to move the needle forward on our KPIs. So I'm saying all of this because now we're getting into a new place where we're talking about, okay, where are we putting these big vision plans, right? What's on your creative list and where do you want to put the priority to push versus the daily tasks or the weekly tasks? For us, email marketing is really heavily pushed in quarter 4. I'm probably not going to want to heavily push my YouTube at the same time because that feels like a big project. I may look at my schedule and say, okay, quarter 2, for example, I'm revamping my podcast in April. So that creative project I have to hit the KPI goal of elevating my podcast and getting new guests, whatever it is, right? But maybe the KPI goal is to have new podcast listeners. maybe in quarter 3, I do a heavy push of a podcast pitch. So here in this moment, I'm talking a lot, but here in this moment, what I would like you to do is look at your creative goals, right? Writing the book, getting the YouTube out, having the email subscribers grow, whatever it may be, starting the podcast, doing the TikTok, whatever, I don't care. Put them in quarters. And you can do that if you want. Take your outline marker and maybe draw a little box like on the side. I'll show you what this looks like. See these little boxes here? Maybe here we put the creative focus of the quarter, okay? So we know in quarter 4, like I said, this focus is email subscribers. So I'm just gonna put an E for email subscribers. Maybe in quarter 3, because I said in quarter 2, I'm fixing podcasts, that's a cleanup project. Quarter 3, maybe I'll just put podcast promotion strategy, PPS, in that little box. And in quarter 2, maybe that's when I can do my YouTube push, my YouTube promotion strategy. Now, again, I just want you to keep in mind that we're going to elaborate on this as we go, but this does not dismiss the fact that like daily or weekly, there should be tasks that are helping you move the needle forward to reach your KPIs. It's what we're putting here are big project opportunities, right? So maybe podcast promotional strategy in quarter 3 is like every day on the Instagram that month, I'm like pushing and getting people to sign up with some sort of giveaway, call to action, challenge to leave reviews, getting new guests and releasing them that month. Like it's a strategy, right? So I'm just going to place it there because I don't really know how that's going to fit in for the whole quarter or where it's going to be, but I do know it's going to be a priority. Okay. Now at this point, you have everything mapped out in a rough schedule in front of you. Now it's time to take it a step further and get a little bit geeked out here with daily tasks, weekly tasks, ClickUp boards, schedules, all the things. So I'm going to transition over from here into my computer to show you guys what this looks like. And again, this is where I say you're gonna either love me or hate me because we're getting so laser focused on what this year looks like ahead. And I'm gonna share all the ways I do this to the point you're gonna be like, oh my God, Lauren, this is a little bit nuts, but it's important, right? It's really, really important. And maybe there's something you learn here that inspires you for your own outline. So I'd rather give you everything I do at the level I'm at versus gatekeep, and you can do what you want with it. So let's jump to the computer. Okay, guys, get ready to be really overwhelmed by a very detailed launch schedule. This is ClickUp. This is the software that we use for our team. I will share a link below if this is something that you want to explore or try. It's more of an advanced software, so it's not necessarily for everybody and where they are in their business. But if it is right for you, we share a link, and I think there's a discount code too, so you can go ahead and check it out. So one thing I want to explain here that's really, really important. Your time freedom is precious, and you should be prioritizing the things that are really important to you. So once we have this outline and we're aware of how things look, we're going to get a little bit more meticulous in the specificity of dates, start dates and end dates to production processes, discovery call processes, when things are open cart, when your program actually runs. This is a board that we have in our team section, and it is a board that you can view as a list, or you can also view it as a calendar, and it literally maps out what's happening and when it's happening. It's a really helpful tool because at any given point when we're trying to add things to the schedule or make changes, we can literally look at this and be like, okay, what's happening, right? We have a last minute urgent project. What's on the plate? What's on the schedule? What do we need to be aware of? So this is helpful. Again, this is like big picture stuff, but it is really, really important. I generally like to look at it as a list, but what I also do is kind of a bit neurotic when it comes to picking these dates. I am actually placing things on my calendar now so that I'm preventing any issues. I would rather be very clearly defined with the dates of my business. And then a friend says, hey, I want to take a trip. When are you available? And I can literally look at my schedule. Like I said, I do not like the idea of being in a launch process when I'm traveling. I really like to enroll people when I'm at home and I can focus and I can rest. I don't like to be trying to enjoy vacation while also trying to promote a program. So this is why I'm like really meticulous about stuff. What I do with that piece of paper that you guys saw is I map out my whole experience of when discovery calls start, when the program actually is in production, and then when the actual program begins. And so you can see by this breakdown, if we look at just as an example, Heal discovery calls are starting on the 21st of January. Around the same time we're in production. So we kind of kick things off at the same exact time. But the actual program itself does not start until February, actually March 11th.
Guys, editing Lauren here. Don't I look so cute? I'm in my Zen den. The fire's going. It's very early in the morning. I want to pause here to just explain something as I'm watching this video. There is a difference between a launch process and the season that may come before that, where you are actually still having discovery calls and still talking about your program and maybe having some interest behind the scenes. My structure and the way I do my business and the way I teach this inside Conscious Creator is that you can actually start taking discovery calls before the doors even open to your program. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm referring to this, and I'll explain it later in the training. When I'm saying that production process is starting at the same time discovery calls are starting, that may confuse you considering we just mapped out a production month and a launch month. So just to clarify, discovery call season's a little bit different, and this is something I teach inside of my launch production process inside of the Conscious Creator Mastermind trainings. So if you need more detail, you can go there. Essentially, you'll find out more as we go, but I just didn't want you to feel confused in this moment. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so our method, and this is where you're going to be like, well, Lauren, wait a minute. We mapped things out. You had 1 month of production. You had 1 month of enrollment. Our method in 2025 is changing. We are actually making a decision to keep enrollment open for 2 months before a program begins, and doing that privately with just discovery calls, but then actually not doing open enrollment until the 2 weeks before the program. So this is just a little bit of an alteration where discovery calls are going to be happening a little bit slower and lower behind the scenes for a couple of months. And then we actually go into our enrollment period. So that's why this looks a little bit different for you to see that the Heal discovery calls are opening up on January 21st. Whereas when I map things out on that board you just saw, I'm talking about like actual enrollment. And you'll see enrollment is a 2-week period starting February 24th before the actual run of the program in March. So I give myself a lot of breath and a lot of stress-free energy to say like February, Heal enrollment season. But when I come to this calendar, I'm actually getting more structured and more specific in the times and the dates of things. You'll notice the retreats are placed here as well. And then I also have these little friend retreats that I do that are placed on my schedule so that I'm non-negotiably not missing any of that. So this is how I take things a step further, is by mapping out the production of things that I'm working on month over month over month. And if this is something that you guys want to do, you can literally see this is a total screenshot, word for word breakdowns with start dates and end dates of what we're working on and when we're working on it for the entire year of 2025. And you can use this as an outline to support you in getting structure and creating organization.
Okay, guys, so yeah, it's the next day. I'm kind of in this moment feeling like I want to go a little bit deeper with you to explore daily tasks, weekly tasks, and monthly tasks. And I'm kind of at a crossroads in how I want to record this, because when we're talking about daily tasks and weekly tasks and monthly tasks, we need to always, just like we're doing with this calendar map out, we're taking into consideration the bigger picture first. Part of what I do is in a digital course I run called Reinvention. And this is where I sit down at the start of a year and I map out my personal goals in 6 or 7 very important areas of my life. And then I micromanage those goals down into asking, what am I doing in my quarters? And then what am I doing month over month? Very similar to what I did here, but I do it on a personal level. And this is important to do before we start having conversations about daily tasks and weekly tasks and monthly tasks in your business. Because, like we talked about, design the life you want, build your business around that. So, for example, one of my personal goals next year is to have a really solid morning routine with meditation on my PEMF mat, reading and studying A Course in Miracles, right? This is a goal of mine. I want to reread the entire Course of Miracles. And so I know that, which means that when I'm designing my daily and weekly tasks, I have to make sure I'm carving out time in the mornings to be able to move the needle forward in my personal goals and to not put my business intentions and my business activities in the morning routines, right? So this is where I'm kind of like, you kind of need to know about the reinvention process, and I'm not so sure how far I want to go into that. So I'm just going to say here in this moment that if you haven't explored Reinvention, it is a very affordable 30-day rinse and repeat experience to help you get really clear on reinventing your life in whatever year you're stepping into. I don't care if it's March or January or July when you're watching this video, to reset your year and to know that you're moving the needle forward in a 12-month process. That's an important thing to do and to have the ability to know how to do in your day-to-day life. So while we are reinventing and transforming ourselves, and we're setting these goals and intentions for our physical body, our health and wellness, we're going to be birthing and discovering in that reinvention process daily tasks, weekly tasks, and monthly tasks to move the needle forward. Now, I map all of this out for you with a Notion tracker board and with a structured app and with calendar adjustments, and it's really necessary to do. The fire agrees. So if you haven't checked it out, laurenoflove.com/reinvention. Highly suggest it, highly important for this conversation. Now, all of that to be said, I'm going to be sharing some stuff on my computer behind the scenes of how I take everything we've done thus far in this outline of your year and your quarters and now your months, and we're going to elaborate on that with some more structure in our schedule, taking into consideration some of these reinvention concepts. So if you don't have it, laurenoflove.com/reinvention. Okay, now let's get back to the screen. So I very rarely share the entire screen of my computer, but considering this is the vision board that I made and the template I share inside of the Reinvention course, I feel like this is a good place to start. Okay, you got to know the energy that you're stepping into next year, the things you want to manifest. For me, there's a lot of spiritual connection, a lot of earth medicine, a lot of creativity and creative expression and health and wellness that's really being prioritized in my year ahead. So I really want to make sure that as I'm building this next step of my mapping out my year, I'm taking all of these things into consideration with how I design my business lifestyle. Remember, again, design the life you want and build your business around it. So the next step in this process, I usually do through a notepad, and I'm shifting into this energy where now that I know kind of what the bigger project visions are, I need to go a step further into knowing where I'm going to place on my day-to-day schedule and on my weekly schedule the times to actually do these things. So first, what I like to do is open up a notepad in my computer so that I can just brainstorm and get the ideas for what really needs to come through to make sure that my day-to-day life is being prioritized and all of the personal activities that I want to have happen are prioritized. So this is my reinvention list, and I'm going to go ahead. You guys know I'm talking a lot about the reinvention course here, but I'm going to go ahead and make these categories just a bit smaller before we dive in so that you can see kind of how I structure this. I walk you through this in the reinvention process, but essentially for the purposes of this training, we're just going to be looking here at the daily and weekly tasks. Now, I know that there are seasons of my business where I'm maybe going heavier into a production process, and I want to make sure that at least once a week I'm carving out time to actually do that. So in this weekly business task, this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to sit down and make sure that there are certain things that I'm doing every single week, at least once a week, that are moving the needle forward with my creative projects, my KPI projects, and then also all of the other things that I'm doing for my launch processes. I want to make sure there's space for it. So I'm just going to share what I do here. I have bigger projects of moving the needle forward with my KPIs, like Instagram. I want to grow my Instagram. So I'm going to do an Instagram live on Mondays. I'm moving the needle forward on my podcast. So on Tuesdays, I record my podcasts. I'm also in production for either a launch or a course. So I carve out time on my production for that on Wednesdays. I have KPIs for growing my email list. So I'm going to write an email newsletter every Thursday. YouTube is a goal of mine. So on Fridays, I have that set. And then because book writing is an intention for me, I also have that written down. Now, this may be something that changes when I'm in a big production month or I'm in a big project. But this is how I know that I'm always moving the needle forward on those KPIs and that I also still have space for the things that I need to get done for my production for my big launches. So for example, if I need to write email copy for my production, I know I'm going to do it on Thursdays. If I have to create Instagram content, I'm probably going to do it on Mondays. If there are podcasts I have to record for my launches of my group programs, that will be done on Tuesdays. Now, where those get placed in like the time of my schedule, that is really about the season of my life. I like to be ever adjusting in that. But generally speaking, what I do, this is the structured app, and I'll go through that in a minute. But what I do is I carve out time where I'm actually blocking out like a 2 hour chunk of time on my week for the course production or the podcast production or the Instagram live. You can literally see I'm putting this on my schedule. But what's important to note is that on Sundays, when I do my Sunday reset, which I talk about in Reinvention, I'm looking at the week ahead and I'm seeing if any of this needs to change. Like, do I need to actually move my podcast production to earlier in the morning because maybe in the afternoon I want to take rest or go to a coffee shop or do something for myself, right? So I will move things around if I have to. As long as these are living on my schedule somewhere, that's all that matters. I will put these in my Google Calendar and I will set them to remind myself and to repeat every single week. And usually what I do is I show this on my schedule as free, which I'll explain in a minute. It's not really necessary. You can mark it as busy if you'd like. But because this is something I move around on my calendar, I don't mark this as busy because I can adjust this as I look ahead for my week. But on Sundays, my week is locked in, set. That's what's happening, non-negotiable. Okay, so now that we have that, I also will use my regular calendar to mark myself as busy for certain things. Obviously, this is my birthday, so I mark myself as not available. Dragonfly weekend, it's my friend gathering that I do a couple of times a year that is marked as not available, right? So I'm carving out these like non-negotiable blocks to say I'm not adding anything else to this list. This is not happening. Nobody can book one-on-one calls with me. Nobody can book discovery calls with me. Another thing I'm doing that is a little bit more of a micromanaged energy is the blocking out my one-on-one time. Okay, so my one-on-one calls, I only allow them to be booked on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays between noon and 3 p.m. I will take 2 calls a day, and that's what I do. That is a block, and that's how I work. Now, depending on the season, sometimes things change and things will adjust, but I do that. What I also do is when I look at my launch processes, when I'm in the final 3 days of selling for a group coaching program, I will block myself off as not available for one-on-one calls because I want to be in the DMs and on sales calls as much as possible. So I will go into my Calendly app, which is where clients book, and I will block out and say, okay, sorry, this is the day before cart closes for Wild Wealthy Feminine. I'm not available, got to block it out, right? So I will do that as well. So my discovery calls schedule, that is also something that's micromanaged. I take discovery calls on Thursdays for my one-on-ones and for the retreat. And then I do discovery calls for my group programs and my masterminds on Mondays and Fridays. That's it. And I block them out. Mondays between 4 and 5, I take a call or two. Fridays between 9 and 10 a.m., take a call or two, and that's it. Right? That's what works for me, is like not jam packing everything into one experience. Obviously, during my launch periods, I'm having more discovery calls and I'm opening up more space. But usually on the day to day, that's how I structure my stuff. I have set days for discovery calls. All of that is done through the Calendly app, and that is something I teach in the onboarding process in the Conscious Creator Mastermind. So if you need more help on having your clients book and having things scheduled, you can look at that training inside Conscious Creator. Now, finally, the structured app. Obviously, with Reinvention, I share how I link this from my Google Calendar for calls and business structure into my structured app where I'm following a day-to-day accountability task list. You could see I've carved out my morning routine that is perfectly aligned for my redesign. You also see there's some home care and self-care things like the quote-unquote hot girl walk, and my bills are always handled on Wednesdays. That's a weekly task I do for my home. I teach you all of that there, but you can also see that my client calls are put in here. See my client call sessions. I also have a drop-in session tonight that's different. Course production. I have a list of my evening self-care, yoga class I put in here. And so I'm getting really, really hyper structured, but you don't necessarily have to do that. I'm just sharing with you some pieces of the process here of how I take things a step further. Ultimately, like I mentioned, this changes season by season. But the one thing that doesn't change is knowing that I have daily tasks and weekly tasks for my business. Now, my daily tasks are not listed out here on my notepad, but I know that showing up on Instagram daily is a thing. Instagram stories is a thing. I'm also daily doing my posts. This is really just what I do daily. Answering my Voxer messages from clients, having my Instagram posts, and having my Instagram stories. Everything else is a weekly production, and that gives me a lot of space and a lot of breath to not feel overwhelmed. But maybe for you, you have more daily tasks because you're in a different season of your business. Also, don't forget the reinvention roadmap is really important to have the tasks that we're using to cleanse our home, to care for our bodies, to care for our mental health, to know our big long-term vision goals. That's all inside of the reinvention course. So if you haven't checked that out, highly suggest you do as well.
Okay, so this is crazy, but I think that about does it. Isn't it cool? I just love that I can show up in my pajamas and like my hair mask and this like thing around my head, and you guys probably are like, yeah, that's cool. I accept that. So I appreciate that. But I think that just does it for this training today. I hope that this was helpful. I hope you found this nourishing and informative and inspiring and not overwhelming. Remember, the purposes of structure, when we talk about masculine energy and feminine energy in our business, I share this a lot in Wild Wealthy Feminine, the group coaching program I run. Masculine energy is the safe container that keeps your business safe. So feminine energy can be expressed. When I have good structure, I can be free, I can feel peaceful, I can feel safe. It's why when you have a lot of money, you can exhale, right? Masculine energy can feel structured, right? I know when my bills are paid, I know I'm provided for, I know I'm cared, I've organized and saved so I can feel good. That masculine energy keeps you safe to be expressed, right? When you know that you have 6 hours of uninterrupted time, that structure and specificity makes you feel safe to explore things. So for some of you, you may look at all this structure and be like, wow, this is neurotic. But for me, it's like, this really allows me a great sense of freedom and an incredible sense of peace and security because I'm not actually worried about anything. Like I literally don't have to think or plan or be concerned about what's next month over month or even day over day because I know. So your goal should not be to implement everything that I've shared in this video, but maybe just to take a couple of things that really speak to you, that you find supportive and helpful. And if you do, I would love to know. So you can reach out in the Conscious Creator Mastermind if you're watching this video and you're in the Mastermind. You can reach out in the comments of this video below. Just really honored and happy to share this with you. So thanks for being here, and I wish you many, many blessings in the outline and organization of your next beautiful year ahead. Bye, everyone. Oh, and Reinvention, don't forget. If you're curious, laurenoflove.com/reinvention.